Greetings. This is basically a follow-up to the first video I made. Um, as I mentioned beforehand, I'm pretty new to making content, so I always try to check my recordings and check everything that I did or mentioned. I brought up in the first video that uh, I'll be going other explanations involving like the strategy that I chose for this format and why it's so powerful. And I don't want to omit anything that I left in the first video. So I'm making this follow-up video to make sure that I provide as much as I can to you guys. Small disclaimer, I cannot share everything that I do with this deck because this everybody's experiences with their strategies are going to be different. But I can explain intricate plays and I will explain intricate strategies as well as explanations involving this format experience with me so far. Yesterday I went to a locals. Um, it was roughly around 20 to 30 players, 5 rounds of Swiss, and I ended up undefeated up until the last round of Swiss. So as I go on with the deck profile, I'll explain like stuff that I did and the decks and the deck types that I faced, uh, that which will also help provide insight. Insight. Um, so going back to like the ratios, right? Here are the Scareclaw names. If you see a lot of deck profiles, you'll see why there are 2 balloons instead of 3. You can make the argument of playing 3, and I'll tell you something that happened at locals that kind of warranted playing the third one. Uh, Triple Reinhardt. Some people don't play 3. I feel like this is the best Scareclaw monster. I feel like this is basically the most one of the most powerful extenders in the game. For those unfamiliar with its effect, um, every Scareclaw has the ability to summon adjacent to another Scareclaw. So think about Crusadias or Burning Abyss um, to some extent. Um, his effect uh, is when he's ever normal or special summon, you add a Scareclaw spell trap, which I already showed beforehand. Are these? Um, Not only that, but if there are multiple monsters in defense position, including itself, and the number is at least 3, you draw an extra card. Um, Anybody who's familiar with Sky Striker already knows how powerful like Mobilize Engage is, and when you start rolling advantage with it. So think of this as something very similar. Um, I mentioned beforehand that Visa Starfrost is an ordinary Scareclaw by name. The reason for that is because it's both searchable with Rephobia, and uh, it also makes Lightheart with searches Rephobia. Um, and he himself can turn into Lightheart. Um, which pretty much makes him a Scareclaw. Adding to that, Lightheart has a hidden effect where if you control Visa Starfrost, you can special it itself from the graveyard. That effect is unspreadable. That is really powerful because something that people don't realize when it comes to this monster is that its effect to add Rephobia is not once per turn. Not only that, but you can make Scareclaw Lightheart with any monster as long as this is not in the extra monster zone. So if you resummon Lightheart, you can remake him into a second Lightheart. And then follow up grabbing another copy of Rephobia. One other important note I'm going to mention out of Visa Starfrost. For those who are familiar with Jesse Khan, He's basically one of the best TCG players in the game right now. He made a very interesting video this week talking about Nightmare Corruptor Ibli. He basically mentioned how Nightmare Corruptor Ibli is going to be a very powerful strategy in this upcoming format, and if your deck does not contest to it, you will lose to it more than not. Visa Starfrost is a level 6 monster. It's also an engine piece, and it's also searchable. That already makes it a very good contender for this format, because you can tribute over Ibli and just keep playing the game. So that's one special point that I have to bring up. I think that's it when it comes to Scareclaw explanations. I guess other explanations that I can bring up is the fact that Scareclaw Arrival is not once per turn. You can even get away with playing 3. And Scareclaw Arrival can bring back Visa Starfrost. So that is really, really important. It also opens the lines for synchro plays. Scareclaw Defang is a new card from Photon Hypernova. It basically turns Scareclaw Tryhard into a Magic Spectre. For those who are not familiar with the Magic Spectre term, it means that they cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects. That is really, really powerful. As I mentioned in the previous video, Scarecrow Tryhard is already an annoying monster to deal with because it turns monsters to defense. Giving it another layer of protection makes it even harder because he's already unaffected by monsters in defense. Which makes it a really big hurdle for a lot of decks to just deal with him on the spot. Scareclaw Twinsaw. This card is basically Icarus Attack or Surge Soul Blackout, involving your Scareclaw monsters or Visa Starfrost. The second effect, the hidden effect that thing has, is if you control a Link 3 or higher monster, Tryhard is the main example here, you can banish this from the graveyard, and for the rest of the turn, neither player can activate Link monster effects. That is a really powerful floodgate effect. I feel like Link strategies are going to be popular in this format, and having a card that literally just freezes that strategy shuts down a lot of decks. So like this is another really important reason to consider Scareclaw as an archetype and like pretty much respect it. The last card I guess I'll talk about is Scareclaw Splash. Not many people play this card. Like you'll see a lot of deck profiles, Scareclaw deck profiles that don't play this card. The first effect is not super relevant. It pretty much makes it so you can target a defense position Scareclaw monster and it can attack this turn. The really important effect is that if you control a Link monster, Scareclaw Link monster, up in the extra monster zone, you can send this card to the graveyard to negate the effect of a card your opponent controls. So it's basically a soft Omni negate. Think of it as like Therion King Regulus, for example. I think that alone warrants the playability of the card because you already have other different layers of disruption you can make to your opponent's board. And having like an Omni negate and double pop and a floodgate for Link monsters, I think not a lot of decks can play against that. One thing to mention, and I guess I'll throw this alongside Pressure Planet. Um, because people are familiar with tier limits in the past format with Primeval Planet Perleno, but what they are not familiar is with the other Visas planets. Um, a good rule of thumb that people should look by is that each planet has a search effect, a pop effect, and a boosting effect. The add effect of Rayphobia is for Scareclaws, but in this deck is more powerful because you already have a way in your extra deck to search Rayphobia, which means any Scareclaw normal summon is basically an engine piece that pretty much uh, grabs more consistency into your deck. Adding to that, um, the pop effect from Rayphobia is that if there are 3 or more defense position monsters, you can pop a card on the board. A lot of people overlook that. Like, um, I play against a very popular strategy that likes keeping monsters in defense position is Sprite. Like, there are many Sprite opponents that are unfamiliar with how this card works, and then they summon their monsters in defense, and then all of a sudden you start popping cards on their board, and by the time they figure it out, it's too late. Um, the boosting effect is not really a boosting effect, it's a debuff effect for your opponent. It debuffs your opponent's monsters for every monster in defense position. People also overlook that. Um, and I've had many situations where I have like a defense position Scareclaw monster, Acro for example, and they try to swing over it thinking they have more attack points, and then Rayphobia is already lowering them by a couple. Um, so that really does come up, especially when you're OTKing with Tryhard. That's it for Scareclaw. Kashtira. As I showed in the previous profile, I had 3 Fenrir, Riceheart, Unicorn, and Kashtira, and Scareclaw. I'll throw in the spells as well. A lot of people are probably thinking, why only 1 Unicorn and why 3 Fenrir? Basically, the number 1 reason is I want my deck to be as optimal as possible if I don't win the Diary roll. Kashtira Fenrir is a more powerful going second card than a ghost going first card. Which means if I face an established board and I summon Fenrir, it's more oppressive to your opponent than if I summon Unicorn, for example. If I do go first, I'm going to try to summon Unicorn first, because Unicorn basically provides these 2 cards, and it makes it so you can solidify your board by making a Rice Heart. And if you don't, if in worst case scenario you don't make a Rice Heart, you leave Unicorn and Fenrir on the board, they're already interruptions for your opponent, because they have to deal with both of them. And adding to that, if we go back to Scareclaw, remember when I brought up the importance of monsters in defense because of Reinhardt's draw effect and Rayphobia's popping effect? Kashtira provides more monsters in defense, which makes it very easy to fulfill that requirement. But yeah, as you noticed, I'm not playing Big Bang. I'm not playing Shangri-La. The only purpose for a Rice Heart is to get to a Rice Heart. That's pretty much it. So basically another body for climbing into the XYZ monster. The second reason for Rice Heart is because it's a third different attribute for Kashtira Theosis. If you noticed, both Fenrir and Scareclaw Kashtira are Earths, um, which is very unfortunate because it basically means that Theosis only technically only has two viable targets for it. Um, so him being a third attribute is very important for the activation and trigger of this card. The other card I'll talk about is Kashtira Birth. Um, this card is really powerful. Like, the fact that I can normal summon level 7s without tributing is very big. Um, I had one game where my opponent summoned, it was my sprite opponent, and he summoned, I forgot his name, Tetsu Namen. It's basically a level 1 monster that pretty much floodgates you into special summoning level 1800 or higher monsters. Kashtira Birth made it so I could normal summon Fenrir and get rid of it. I also faced two Dracos on one round in my locals, and he summoned Vanity's Fiend on me. Kashtira Birth also made it so I could summon Fenrir and run over Sand Monster, aforementioned monster. Um, but yeah, like as I mentioned previously, Kashtira is a powerful engine that supplements Scareclaw, and Scareclaw is an archetype that supplements the weaknesses that Kashtira already have. Um, Pretty much. That's it for Scareclaws. I mean, Kashtiras. Adventure. Um, So people who are familiar with Adventure already know this, already know the ratios. One card I was playing on my list and I was considering like putting it back on my list is Illegal Knight. Um, Something important to note about Illegal Knight and Griffin Raider, they're both level 7s. That means they can also become engine pieces for to make Kashtira a Rice Heart. The thing about it is, you pretty much want to keep Griffin on board because Griffin is Omni-Negate. Not only that, but if you take Griffin out of the equation, your board is going to be more susceptible to hand traps, more namely Nibiru the Primal Being. As I mentioned beforehand on the previous video, this deck has a couple of Omni-Negates, but getting to them without getting rocked, it puts you in a hard place, no pun intended. So pretty much that's it for Adventure. Another take I want to make, I've seen Scareclaw deck profiles where my players mention they side out this engine if they go second. I don't understand. I feel like this deck, this engine is really powerful going second. It pretty much forces negates from your opponent. Granted, you do have 2 bricks with these 2 cards here, but I feel like that sacrifice is well worth it for what this engine provides. And yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to this portion. I already brought up the extra deck. I already mentioned the utility behind it. I'll probably do test hands next, and as I'm doing test hands, I'll explain like my locals experience with the deck and like for hands that I had and strategies that I did and the archetypes that I faced. If you're tuning into this video, that means you're pretty much invested into what I'm making right now, and I really thank you and appreciate your time and your attention into watching this deck profile. Stay tuned. There's more to come.